looking to connect a region of over 600 more bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. This is Alma Angeles. Joining me today is Chriselle Yacuna. Hello, Chriselle.
Hello, Alma. I'm Chriselle Yacuna from your ABC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
Thank you for joining us today, Chriselle. Really appreciate it. All right, on today's headlines. President Duterte on Wednesday called for universal access to a coronavirus disease vaccine, saying it's the only way to beat the global health crisis.
Government chief hails as UN as Center for Harmonizing Actions of Nations. Over the past 75 years, peace and cooperation and friendship have been thriving while poverty and diseases have been on the retreat, and the life of the humankind has been changing for the better. Prime Minister Win Chuan-Phuc stressed the point in his video message sent to the United Nations General Assembly.
Meanwhile, President Duterte also affirmed the Permanent Court of Arbitration's ruling in favor of the Philippines arbitration case against China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea before the UN General Assembly. President Duterte on Wednesday called for universal access to a coronavirus disease vaccine, saying it's the only way to beat the global health crisis. In his first speech before the 75th United Nations General Assembly, the president cited the need for rich and poor nations to have access to a vaccine. Take a look.
Call for the invisible enemy that is COVID-19 has brought about an unfamiliar global landscape and unleashed a crisis without precedent. It is the biggest test the world and the United Nations face since World War II. We are at a crossroads. How we address COVID-19 will define our future. For the Philippines, this means putting up all of the peoples of our United Nations at the core of this response. We will need to ask hard and fundamental questions about the vision and mission that the United Nations conceptualized 75 years ago. We need to ask ourselves whether or not we have remained true and faithful to the United Nations principles and ideas. COVID-19 knows no border, it knows no nationality, it knows no race, it knows no gender, it knows no age, it knows no creed. The Philippines values the role that the United Nations plays in its fight against the pandemic. And a middle-income country whose economic advances have been derailed by the pandemic, we welcome the launch of the UN COVID Response and Recovery Fund, ensuring universal access to anti-COVID-19 technologies and products is pivotal in the global pandemic recovery. The world is in the race to find safe and effective vaccine. When the world finds that vaccine, access to it must not be denied nor withheld. It should be made available to all rich and poor nations alike as a matter of policy. The Philippines joins our partners in the ASEAN and the non-aligned movement, and in raising our collective voice, the COVID-19 vaccine must be considered a global public good. Let us be clear on this. We can call for a global health agenda with enough resources and policy space for the World Health Organizations. We need a WHO that is quick to coordinate and quicker to respond. The Philippines will do its part in the pooling of global resources. Our health workers are among the best.
Now, as you heard there, the President said the Philippines joins its partners in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the Nine Aligned Movement in believing that the COVID-19 vaccine must be considered a global public good. And with each nation having a strategy in fighting the pandemic, he said the world needs coordinated international plans to defeat the health crisis.
President Rodrigo Duterte reiterated his willingness to accept Rohingya refugees fleeing war and persecution in Myanmar.
The Philippines continue to honor this humanitarian tradition in accordance with our obligation under the 1951 Convention of the Status of Refugees and the 1967 Protocol. But lest we forget, helping the most vulnerable, those displaced by conflict, persecution, and political instability is a shared responsibility of all countries. As I have said many times, the doors of the Philippines are open, as they have always been, to everyone fleeing for safety, such as the Rohingyas. In the face of mounting refugee crisis worldwide, let us work together towards ending the conflicts and conditions that force people to flee their homes.
In the same event, President Duterte also urged a strong response to climate change as the pandemic, he said, in the Philippines is suffering the most from the threat of climate change. Again, let's listen in.
Mr. President, the same urgency needed to fight COVID-19 is needed to address the climate crisis. This is a global challenge that has worsened existing inequalities and vulnerabilities from within and between nations. Climate change has worsened, and the ravages of pandemic. People in the developing countries like the Philippines suffer the most. We cannot afford to suffer more. The Philippines joined the Paris Agreement to fight climate change. We call on all parties, especially those who have not made good their commitment to fight climate change, to honor the same. We call on all parties to strengthen communities and peoples for preparedness and resilience. We're talking about mankind and Earth, our one and only home.
President Rodrigo Duterte on Wednesday vowed to continue upholding the rights of Filipinos in his speech before the United Nations General Assembly. In his 20-minute speech, Duterte vowed to continue to protect the human rights of Filipinos, especially from the scourge of illegal drugs, criminality, and terrorism. He also slammed several interest groups for weaponizing human rights to discredit his administration.
Mr. President, the Philippines will continue to protect the human rights of its people, especially from the scourge of illegal drugs, criminality, and terrorism. A number of interest groups have weaponized human rights, some well-meaning, others ill-intentioned. They attempt to discredit the functioning institutions and mechanisms of democratic country and a popularly elected government which in its last 2 years still enjoy the same widespread approval and support. These detractors pass themselves off as human rights advocates while preying on the most vulnerable humans, even using children as soldiers or human shields in encounters. Even schools are not spared from their malevolence and anti-government propaganda. They hide their misdeeds under the blanket of human rights, but the blood oozes through. To move forward, open dialogue and constructive engagement with the United Nations is the key, but this must be done in full respect of the principles of objectivity, non-interference, non-selectivity, and genuine dialogue. These are the fundamental basis for productive international cooperation on human rights.
Saying terrorism looms large, President Duterte defended the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 before the UN General Assembly, describing it as a legal framework to help curb terrorism in the country. The Philippines continues to experience terrorism. The most recent was the 2 successive bomb explosions in Jolo in August that killed several soldiers and civilians and injured 40 others. Aside from the Marawi siege in 2017, other terrorist attacks include the Jolo Cathedral attack in 2019 and the Davao City night market bombing in September of 2016, among others. Again, let's listen in.
Mr. President, terrorism looms large. As I said at the Aqaba process, the Philippines will do everything and partner with anyone who would sincerely desire to protect the innocent from terrorism in all its manifestations. The Marawi siege, where foreign terrorist fighters took part, taught us that an effective legal framework is crucial. Our 2020 Anti-Terrorism Act shores up the legal framework by focusing on both terrorism and the usual reckless response to it. Its enactment was done pursuant to our commitment and the strict adherence to the relevant Security Council resolution and the UN Global Counter-terrorism strategy. Most importantly, we remain committed to rebuild the stricken community and address the root causes of terrorism and violent extremism in my country.
Meanwhile, President Duterte affirmed the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling in favor of the Philippines arbitration case against China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea before the United Nations General Assembly. In his pre-recorded speech delivered from Malacanang Palace, Duterte, during the 75th session of the General Assembly in New York early Wednesday, Manila time, encouraged fellow UN member states to remain mindful of their obligations and commitment to the Charter of the United Nations, and as amplified by the 1982 Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of International Disputes.
We must remain mindful of our obligation and commitment to the Charter of the United Nations, and as amplified by the 1982 Manila Declaration on the peaceful settlement of international disputes, the Philippines affirms that commitment in the South China Sea in accordance with UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award. The award is now part of international law, beyond compromise and beyond the reach of passing governments to dilute, diminish, or abandon. We firmly reject attempts to undermine it. We welcome the increasing number of states that have come in support of the award and what it stands for: the triumph of reason over rashness, of law over disorder, of amity over ambition. This, as it should, is the majesty of the law.
Over the past 75 years, peace and cooperation and friendship have been thriving while poverty and diseases have been on the retreat, and the life of humankind has been changing for the better. Prime Minister Win Chuan-Phuc stressed the point in his video message sent to the United Nations General Assembly high-level meeting to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. The government chief expressed his belief that these immense achievements would not have been possible without the fundamental principles of the UN Charter, and the United Nations itself as the center for harmonizing the actions of nations. Let's take a look.
Thưa quý vị, chúng ta kỷ niệm 75 năm ngày thành lập Liên Hiệp Quốc vào thời điểm rất đặc biệt, khi niềm tự hào về sự lớn mạnh của Liên Hiệp Quốc đang xen nỗi lo lắng về bất ổn, dịch bệnh đang lan rộng trên hành tinh. Từ tro tàn của chiến tranh, sau 75 năm, thế giới đã không phải chứng kiến thêm một cuộc chiến tranh thế giới mới. Hòa bình, hợp tác, hữu nghị được vun đắp, đói nghèo, bệnh tật được đẩy lùi, cuộc sống của nhân loại được đổi thay. Những thành quả to lớn đó không thể có được nếu không dựa trên những nguyên tắc cơ bản của Hiến chương Liên Hợp Quốc. Không thể đạt được nếu không có Liên Hiệp Quốc, trung tâm điều phối hành động chung của các quốc gia. Thế giới đang đứng trước những thách thức chưa từng có tiền lệ. Đại dịch Covid-19 cùng với bất ổn, xung đột, cạnh tranh nước lớn, chính trị cường quyền, biến đổi khí hậu đang đe dọa nền hòa bình và phát triển bền vững của các dân tộc. Việt Nam có câu lửa thử vàng, gian nan thử sức. Thực tại càng cam go thử thách, chúng ta cần đoàn kết, hợp tác, tăng cường chủ nghĩa đa phương với trung tâm là Liên Hiệp Quốc, nghiêm túc tuân thủ hiến chương và luật pháp quốc tế, triệt để tôn trọng độc lập, chủ quyền, toàn vẹn lãnh thổ của mỗi quốc gia, đặt con người ở trung tâm của mọi nỗ lực phát triển để không ai bị bỏ lại phía sau. Thưa quý vị, trải qua nhiều thập kỷ đấu tranh về chân lý, không có gì quý hơn độc lập tự do, và 35 năm thực hiện tiến trình đổi mới, lấy người dân làm trung tâm. Ngày nay, Việt Nam đang tự tin phát triển năng động, tái cơ cấu sâu rộng nền kinh tế, chủ động hội nhập quốc tế, tham gia có trách nhiệm tại nhiều diễn đàn đa phương, nhất là Liên Hiệp Quốc, phấn đấu vì mục tiêu dân giàu, nước mạnh, công bằng, dân chủ, văn minh. Bằng nỗ lực của mình và hợp tác với nhiều quốc gia, tổ chức quốc tế, đến nay chúng tôi đã cơ bản kiểm soát được Covid-19, từng bước phục hồi đà phát triển nhanh nền kinh tế. Chúng tôi trân trọng cảm ơn các nước đã dành tín nhiệm cao bầu Việt Nam là ủy viên không thường trực Hội đồng Bảo an Liên Hiệp Quốc và đang nỗ lực hết sức mình hoàn thành tốt nhất trọng trách này. Đồng thời là Chủ tịch ASEAN năm 2020, Việt Nam cùng các thành viên nỗ lực xây dựng cộng đồng ASEAN đoàn kết, tự cường, thịnh vượng. Nhân dân Việt Nam quyết tâm cùng tất cả các dân tộc trên thế giới gìn giữ hòa bình, thực hiện thành công các mục tiêu phát triển bền vững SDG 2030 và lá cờ Việt Nam sẽ tung bay tại thêm nhiều phái bộ gìn giữ hòa bình của Liên Hiệp Quốc trên toàn cầu. Tôi tin rằng với quyết tâm cao và nỗ lực mạnh mẽ, chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau xây dựng thế giới hòa bình và tương lai tươi sáng cho hôm nay và mai sau. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn.
All right, Rochelle and I will be back right after this short break.
Limang contestants ang magpapawaw sa kantahan ngayong Sabado upang makuha ang 10,000 piso at magkaroon kaya ng chance na mag-uwi ng 2 milyong piso sa Grand Finals. Dito lang sa Tagisan ng Galing, Part 2.
Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is co-presented by Cooper, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Cooper, your ultimate NEPs and air conditioning solutions. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Our sponsors, BDO, we find ways. JRC Industrial Sales, RS Square Variables Incorporated, your trusted UPS supplier and UPS maintenance provider in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation, Robis Builders, Villa Cáceres, Chris Rock Enterprises, Victory Carpentry, DOP Asiatic Pest Control Services, and AUB Aspire for the Future. In partnership with New Era University ETAP, Expanded Tertiary Education, Equivalency and Accreditation Program. Embrace Cafe, we embrace differently abled persons.
Do you want to earn a degree while you work? New Era University now offers Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETAP. ETAP is an educational scheme that recognizes knowledge, skills, and prior learning obtained by individuals from non-formal and informal education experiences. It is implemented through deputized higher educational institutions like the New Era University that awards the appropriate degrees. Programs offered are the following: Master's Program, Masters of Arts in Education, major in Educational Management, Master's Program in Business Administration, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Political Science, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Mass Communication, Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Filipino, major in English, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with majors in Human Resources Development, Marketing Management, and Financial Management. Beneficiaries must be Filipinos who have attained at least high school level of education. The program is flexible and you don't need to attend regular classes. Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETAP, is under the supervision of Dr. Nilo L. Rosas, the University President, and Professor Anita P. Santos, Director of ETAP. For more information, contact the following: Cristina Moreno, 0995-138-0786, or email cvmoreno@neu.edu.ph, or Arlene Sarmiento, 0906-298-9150, or email cedctl@neu.edu.ph. What are you waiting for? Let New Era University be your partner in achieving your dreams.
From Maldives, we are joined by Steffi De Juan. So Steffi, the health ministry there has arranged special exams for students tested positive for COVID-19. Do tell us more about this, Steffi.
Hi, Michelle. Good day to you and to all the televiewers around the world. So, according to the edition, a special exam arrangements will be made for A-level students who may test positive for COVID-19 or find themselves required to undergo quarantine during the period. It was announced by Health Emergency Operations Center, or HEOC. Deputy Minister of Education and Head of the Department of Public Examinations, or DPE, Muhammad Ishan, said that efforts were underway to finalize separate arrangements for students who are able to undergo examinations even if they test positive for COVID-19. 2 separate exam halls were being prepared to be utilized in the event that a student is diagnosed with the virus and placed under quarantine. He also assured that thermal screening procedures will be enacted to all examination halls and social distancing measures will also be established. Furthermore, Technical Advisory Group or TAG of HEOC has advised students and parents to adhere to all recommended safety guidelines. HEOC spokesperson Dr. Nazla Rafiq concluded noting that the Ministry of Education would collaborate with HEOC and other relevant authorities to arrange transportation for quarantine students required to sit for exams at separate centers. And that's the latest news for today. Back to you, Trishelle.
Thank you for your updates, Steffi. Looking forward for more of your updates.
Thank you so much, Rizal. Reporting live from Maldives, this is Stephanie Juan, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, Boracay Island will finally reopen to tourists, even those coming from general community quarantine areas like the National Capital Region. Now, this was the decision made by the Boracay Interagency Task Force during its meeting Tuesday evening, according to Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat. In a Viber message, she enthused breaking news: Boracay will open October 1, even to GCQ, provided they are negative in RT-PCR test. It wasn't clear, however, if the RT-PCR tests would be taken by the tourists upon arrival in Boracay or prior to their departure from their home locations. The BIATF decision was welcomed by the Tourism Congress of the Philippines, recognizing the double whammy suffered by Boracay, first being closed for 6 months in 2018 for a government-led rehab effort, and then second, the COVID-19 crisis, which led to international travel restrictions around the world. Now, TCP President Jose C. Clemente III reminded stakeholders on the island and its visitors to strictly observe health guidelines and protocols to ensure a safe and healthy experience. Romulo Puyat, meanwhile, said no foreigners are to be allowed just yet, which had initially been a proposal by the governor of Aklan. At present, Boracay accepts tourists from Western Visayas, but these are not enough to lift the island's arrivals and visitor receipts. President Duterte on Monday evening praised Environment Secretary Roy Cimatu for leading the efforts to rehabilitate Manila Bay. In a taped public address, the president said he was impressed by how Cimatu is able to succeed in yet another challenge to rehabilitate a well-known tourist spot in the country's capital, particularly known for its famous sunset. Take a look.
Let us begin by congratulating Secretary Cimatu. You know, I remember that meeting, and I think everybody was there when I said, Del, kaya mong linisin to? And the answer was a very curtly given, said, kaya. Trabaho eh. Now people now are really enjoying the reclaimed area with the white sand, maski na papano.
A portion of the Manila Bay was temporarily reopened to the public over the weekend after crushed dolomite was laid on its shoreline near the U.S. Embassy. The president said he was pleased because people are now enjoying the benefits of the determined action of a cabinet member to do good. He also thanked other cabinet members for helping him run the country. During the reopening, throngs of people flocked to the area to take photos and videos. At one point, the people even failed to observe physical distancing along Rojas Rojas Boulevard, eventually getting viral on social media. Now, Malacanang said the crowd of visitors which flocked to the segment of Manila Bay shoreline showed that the decision of the government to cover it with white sand was a good decision. But presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reminded law enforcement authorities to strictly enforce quarantine protocols and urged the public to comply.
Chinese death row inmate digs tunnel to escape Indonesian jail. Police said a Chinese drug trafficker on death row escaped from a jail near Indonesia's capital after digging a 30-meter, 100 feet tunnel from his cell. Kai Shifan, sentenced to death in 2017 for trafficking 110 kilograms of methamphetamine, broke out of Tangerang prison in Banten last week via a narrow tunnel, which connected to a sewer, officials said. And I quote, "This is the second time he escaped," end quote, said Tangerang Police Chief Sugeng Haryanto, adding he also managed to get out of the National Police Criminal Investigation Department cells in Jakarta while on remand. Officials said Kai had invited his cellmate to join him, but he had declined. Authorities said they had recovered a crowbar, chisel, screwdriver, and other tools to be used to dig the hole, speculating he may have got them from building work being done in a prison kitchen. Kai's first escape was in January 2017 via a hole he made in a bathroom wall using an iron rod. Along with others, he had climbed 2.5 feet wall, but he was recaptured in West Java 3 days later. Although rare by foreigners, jailbreaks are common in Indonesia, while most prisons are overcrowded and poorly staffed.
Now, with the coronavirus devastating jobs across the country, desperate Indonesians are flocking to illegal gold mines as the soaring price of the precious metal overrides the risk to their lives and the environment. Spooked by the economic destruction wrought by the pandemic, consumers and investors around the world have been snapping up gold, which is seen as a hedge against volatility, sending its price to a record above $2,000 an ounce last month. The surge in demand has fueled a boom in mineral-rich Indonesia's illegal mining industry, with workers ignoring the threat of arrest, mercury poisoning, or being caught in the middle of gun battles. Father of two, Mustafa is among the hundreds who play a daily game of cat and mouse with authorities in the restive Papua region as they pan for nuggets in a river near U.S.-based Freeport's sprawling Grasberg site, one of the world's biggest gold mines. On a good day, Mustafa collects a gram of gold by sifting through the mud with a fabric filter, which he can sell to a local trader for about 800,000 rupiah or $55 US. No small sum in one of Indonesia's poorest regions. The Department of Agriculture said the bird flu outbreak in backyard farms in Taytay, Rizal, which affected a few hundreds of Muscovy ducks and native chickens, is now under control. And government authorities have started disinfection procedures in the affected farms. The avian influenza technical spokesman Arlene Vitiaco told the Business Mirror that the outbreak in Barangay Santa Ana, Taytay, Rizal has been contained following the complete stamping out of 171 birds in the affected farms. Vitiaco explained that the two backyard farms were confirmed positive for the avian influenza, or HPAI, H5N6 out of 12 farms in the 1-kilometer radius that were tested by the government. Now, Vitiaco said 5 backyards raisers experienced unusual mortality among their flock, including deaths in game fowls, but only the 5th affected raiser reported to the government about the incident in late August. The affected farm that reported to the government had about 500 native chickens, 300 Muscovy ducks, with the majority of the population being wiped out by the disease. Now, Vitiaco said the government immediately dispatched teams to undertake the depopulation right after it was confirmed that A1 struck the poultry farms. The bird flu outbreak in Taytay, Rizal is another setback toward the declaration of the Philippines as a bird flu-free country again. This is now the 3rd confirmed outbreak this year, following the earlier cases in Jaén, Nueva Ecija, and San Luis, Pampanga.
Vietnam sets new trade surplus record at 14.46 billion US dollars. Vietnam posted a trade surplus of $14.46 billion as of September 15, with its exports reaching $187.9 billion and imports standing at $173.5 billion. According to preliminary statistics by the General Department of Customs, Vietnam's trade revenue hit $24.301 billion US dollars in the first half of September, down by 8.9% compared to the latter half of August 2020. Of the figure, export value decreased by 15.8% to $12.63 billion US dollars, while import value picked up 1% to $11.666 billion US dollars. In the first 8 months of the year, the nation's trade volume reached $336.92 billion US dollars, including $175.36 billion US dollars in its export turnover, up by 2.3% year on year, and $161.9 billion US dollars in import turnover, down by 2.4%. According to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the European Union Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, or EVFTA, coming into effect has brought about significant opportunities for Vietnam's exports, helping to diversify export markets and items, especially the country's strength, products subject to the high tax cuts such as farm produce, aquatic products, timber products, garments and textiles, leather and footwear, and electronics. To maintain the achieved results, the ministry will continue to disseminate commitments in the EVFTA and other FTAs regarding the areas of trade in goods and services, investment, import tariff reduction, and elimination, and market access in order to improve the understanding of the people and businesses. Tropical storm Nul claims 6 lives, injures 112 others. An update on Storm Nul, the strongest storm to hit Vietnam so far this year. The storm has now killed 6 people and injured 112 others, according to the Central Steering Committee for Natural Disaster Prevention and Control. This storm, which ravaged Vietnam's central region last Friday, also destroyed 13 houses, damaged 22,716 houses, and many road sections in the provinces of Nghệ An, Hà Tĩnh, Quang Binh, Quang Tri, Tuat Tin Huế, and Da Nang City. Nul hit Vietnam's central localities, especially Da Nang, Tuat Tin Huế, Quang Binh, and Quang Tri, with wind speeds reaching 90 to 100 kilometers per hour and hitting 135 kilometers per hour at times. The storm weakened upon landfall and became a tropical low-pressure system.
All right, ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETF. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
Huawei Technologies in Brunei Darussalam officially commences its virtual Seeds for the Future 2020 program at the main lecture theater 2, Pengiran Anak Puteri Rashidan Satadul Bolkiah Institute of Health Sciences Extension Building, University Brunei Darussalam. Officiating at the opening ceremony was the Deputy Minister of Education, Yang Mulia Datin Seri Paduka, Dr. HGA's Romaiza Binti Haji Mod Saleh, with Her Excellency Yu Hong, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, and Mr. Kevin Janwei, Chief Executive Officer of Huawei Technologies in Brunei Darussalam. Seeds for the Future is Huawei's flagship Global Corporate Social Responsibility, or CSR program, and was launched in 2008. The program aims to develop skilled local information and communications technology talent and bridge communication between countries and cultures. By sharing ICT expertise and experiences in the global business environment, young people from different countries can learn about advanced technologies in the ICT industry. Participants can also accumulate ICT expertise and skills through the Seeds for the Future program and therefore contribute to the progress of the global ICT industry. Participants of the program are exposed to Huawei's cloud computing, Internet of Things, building and configuring their own stations, as well as many other cutting-edge solutions. The program is delivered through technology workshops and networking events at Huawei headquarters in China. A total of 32 Bruneian students sponsored by Huawei have participated in the program in Shenzhen and Beijing between 2015 and 2019. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the annual Seeds for the Future 2020 is now being held virtually this year with support from the University Brunei Darussalam UBD, according to the Brunei government website.
Two extremely rare Javan rhinoceros calves have been spotted in an Indonesian national park, boosting hopes for the future of one of the world's most endangered mammals. The rhino calves, a female named Helen and the male called Luther, were seen in their mothers in footage taken from nearly 100 camera traps installed in Ujung Kulon National Park between March and August, authorities said in a statement on Sunday. On the westernmost tip of Java in Banten province, Ujung Kulon is the last remaining wild habitat for Javan rhinos. After years of population decline, the arrival of the new calves brings the total number of the rare mammals to 74. The sanctuary comprises some 5,100 hectares of lush rainforest and freshwater streams. The Indonesian government has been surveying other areas across Java and Sumatra Islands to relocate the rhinos from the danger of Mount Krakatau, an active volcano not far from the national park. Javan rhinos have folds of loose skin, giving them the appearance of wearing armor plating. They once numbered in the thousands across Southeast Asia, but have been hard hit by rampant poaching and human encroachment on their habitats. ASEAN leaders established transport system to allow for freer trade in the ASEAN economic community. The plan is called ASEAN Transit System, or ACS.
ASEAN, a big expanding market. ASEAN and the EU share common objectives for economic integration and free trade. The ASEAN economic community is a reality, driving forwards a single market and a production base, and connecting a highly competitive region, fully integrated with the global economy. ASEAN acts as a focus for the free movement of goods, services, and investments. Together, the 10 member states generated $3 trillion in 2018, making ASEAN the 5th largest economy in the world. With the highest potential growth globally, ASEAN is set to be the world's 4th largest economy by 2050. The ASEAN Customs Transit System, or ACTS, creates a trade facilitation platform for the free movement of goods in the region. Developed jointly by ASEAN and the European Union, ACTS removes the need for multiple customs declarations at borders. ACTS requires only one electronic declaration, one guarantee, and one truck for the entire journey. This means faster, more reliable on-time deliveries and lower transport costs, backed by state-of-the-art tracking and monitoring capabilities. ACTS ensures the safety and security of society, protecting public revenues and protecting public values. Regional integration and sustainable growth are values shared by ASEAN and the European Union. Driving towards the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, ACTS will play a key role in building the regional economy, taking the single market to the next level.
All right. Thank you very much, Chriselle, for joining us today. And congratulations to Vietnam for effectively curbing the virus spread over there. How do you guys do it?
Okay, I think from the from observance of the Vietnamese government, I think because of the massive tracing of the infected ones and the effective implementation of the quarantine procedures, and
I guess you guys are very strict over there, yeah, with the quarantine procedures, because
we've been
we
very
saw.
strict. The government has been very strict.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. And how about the storm? How was it? How is it there in the city? Did you guys get affected in any way?
We had some rains for the recent days, but I think the belly affected is the Da Nang, which is the epicenter of the storm.
Okay. All right. Thank you again for helping me out today, Chriselle. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today, Alma, and as always, very happy to be of service. Again, I am Chriselle Yacuna. We live in interesting times.
All right. Thank you, Chriselle. And I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us here in ASEAN in Focus. We live in interesting times.